Hey, this is Helen from HypnoFit, and today I'm going to give you 3 steps for eliminating anxiety. So, with myself, in terms of my own personal experience, anxiety is something that I used to do really well. I used to be an expert at anxiety. I used to get anxious at the littlest thing. So let's have a look at anxiety. What is anxiety? People put the word disorder at the end of anxiety as if it's some sort of mental illness or something. It isn't. So all anxiety is, if you put it back into its most basic form, what anxiety is imagining something going wrong. That's all it is. It's imagining something going wrong. And so what actually happens with our subconscious mind is that when we imagine something going wrong, our subconscious mind thinks it's happening right now. And so what it does, it puts our body into that freeze, flight, or fight response. And so then we have a physical reaction. Our digestive system stops working, the blood rushes to our hands and our feet, and our body gears itself up for danger. So it goes into that freeze, flight, or fight response. And so the adrenaline builds up in our system, and we're ready for a fight, we're ready to freeze, or we're ready to run away. But in fact, we don't need to do any of that because there is no actual danger. We've just imagined it. So you've got to remember that whatever thoughts you have in your head, whatever you imagine, your body is responding as if it's actually happening. And so the very first thing that needs to happen to eliminate anxiety, step number 1, is that you need to physically relax. Hey Michael, good to see you. You need to physically relax. You can't control your thoughts until your body actually is relaxed. So with our clients that come here to HypnoFit, when we do any sort of therapy, any kind of hypnotherapy to help them with their actual thoughts in their head, the first thing that we need to do is actually help them relax. So as hypnotherapists, it's physical relaxation and then mental relaxation. So with anxiety, you have to relax your body first. So how do you relax your body first? Deep breathing. Deep breathing is the number 1 way that we relax our body. And so how do we deep breathe? What we need to do is we need to sit ourselves down and make sure that our limbs are actually not crossed over and not holding ourselves tight, and that we're just relaxed. Allow those limbs to just be relaxed. And focus on a point above eye level. Just look at that point above eye level and take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Hold it to the count of 4 and then just let it out of an open mouth. So you can really feel yourself relaxing when you do that. You just feel yourself relaxing. So you need to do that, 10 times to relax. Now you might say, oh, but I'm feeling anxious whilst I'm driving. You can do that while you're driving. You don't have to have your eyes closed. So what you can do if you're feeling yourself tense as you're driving is just breathing through the nose, hold it, and then just breathe out of an open mouth and just relax and just let go. So that's step number 1. Step number 1 is allow yourself to physically relax the body. Once the body is physically relaxed, only then can we control the thoughts in our head. So, step number 1, physically relaxed. Step number 2 is actually then finding out what you're specifically anxious about. So many clients don't realize what they're specifically anxious about because they have so many different thoughts going through their head, but there are a few specific things that they might be anxious about. It could be that they're specifically anxious about their children not doing well at school. They could be specifically anxious about something happening to their teenage son or daughter if they're out. They could be specifically anxious about their partner's response to a particular issue. They could be specifically anxious about not having enough money to pay their bills. I don't know, but you do, as to what you're specifically anxious about. So you really have to think about what is it that you're specifically anxious about. So that's step number 2. Okay, So step number 3, now that we know what we're specifically anxious about, we need to imagine that specific event turning out positively. So we have, as human beings, we have an amazing creative imagination. And so we need to make it work for us, not against us. We need to make it for us, not against us. So we need to imagine that it's turning out well. So as an example, you know, I'm the youngest of 4 elder siblings, and 3 of them are sisters. And when their kids were, you know, teenagers and going out, they would worry about them coming home. And they thought that was a natural part of life. Well, it isn't. You don't have to worry about something that you have no control over. Instead, you have to imagine that everything is going to be exactly as it needs to be. And that way, you're not feeling anxious. And that way, you're filled with positive energy and you're able to have clarity in terms of what is actually happening rather than what you're imagining is happening, if that makes sense. So let me just reiterate those steps. Step number 1 is you need to physically relax. How do we physically relax? By making sure that our limbs are limp and relaxed, that we take nice deep breaths. Step number 2 is that we are very specific as to what we're anxious about. Very specific. So not having enough money is not specific, that's general. So what does that mean, not having enough money? Not paying a specific bill, or you know, what does it mean? You have to be very, very specific. Step number 3 is to imagine that turning out positively rather than negatively. So put the right picture in your head. So what will happen is that initially when you start practicing this technique, you will actually find it a bit of a struggle because you're not used to thinking like that. You're used to thinking negatively. But you consciously make that effort every time, consciously make that effort to think positively, then that's the only way that you can think. So personally, from someone who used to be an expert at doing anxiety, in other words, I was a very anxious person before I was a hypnotherapist, I literally cannot do anxiety now. I always think of the positive. I always imagine something working out in a positive way. So I might be in the middle of a workshop and I'm about to present and none of the equipment is working, but I imagine that the workshop went well, everything was good, and then I get positive feedback at the end of the workshop. I'm very specific about the picture that I put in my head. So they're the 3 steps. Now there's a little bit more detail to that. If you want me to send you a free guide on the 3 steps to eliminating anxiety, all you need to do is send me a personal message to Helen Mitas, and I will give you a free guide to how to eliminate anxiety in 3 easy steps. So it's just something that we do. It's not a disorder. It's not a mental illness. It's something that we do at the subconscious level. And because we do it, we can also not do it instead. So we need to choose our thoughts. We need to choose our reality. There is no need to be anxious. We can create our own reality no matter how small or big the situation is. Have an amazing day. Love you. Bye.